Hello, and welcome to BrigadeCon 2014. My name is Heather, and I will be your host for this event. Blurring the lines, creating realistic characters by pulling from yourself. To give you all a little bit of background about myself, I've been actively role-playing for a little over 10 years now. I'm currently pursuing an associate's degree in library science, and I'm getting started in my career as an author. This past August, I self-published a collection of poetry. I also have a novel and 2 collections of short stories in various stages of development. Hopefully they will be published in the near future. But the topic at hand. Creating realistic characters by pulling from yourself. The conventional wisdom, it seems, is that when creating a character for a game, is to put a little bit of yourself in them, just enough that it's something that you can play, but to keep them far enough removed from yourself that you're not in danger of, becoming mentally unstable or being too sad when something happens and you lose the character. I don't really know what the reason for that is. It's advice that I found myself giving people, actually, multiple times. It's things that I've discussed with people, with my friends, actually. We have discussed at length putting pieces of yourself into a character, and how and the why for doing it. But I'm not here today to talk about the conventional wisdom, and I'm not actually even here today to tell you how to create a realistic character by pulling from yourself and your life experiences. My entire reason for being here today is to say that I did it, and to tell you what I learned from it. So I have a lovely companion with me here tonight. I don't know if you can see her. She's my dog. At some point, she's going to need to go outside, and I'm going to need to take care of that. It's just kind of how these things go. I'm here tonight with no assistance and taking care of the dog. So that shouldn't be too long, though. But I really want to get into this. It's actually only in hindsight that I've realized over the past year and a half, nearly every character I've created has flown in the face of the conventional wisdom. And I'd actually like to start going back to last May, when the Vampire the Masquerade YouTube experiment was just getting started. I created a character for that game. Her name was Anna Remington, and she was a toreador. She was creative, intelligent. She was an author. She was, of course, a demure young lady, being a member of Clan Toreador. She was actually the primogen of Clan Toreador for a little while. She was also the first character I ever made for a Vampire the Masquerade game. She started off in way over her head, and she desperately needed people to believe that she wasn't. Her backstory, she had spent most of her life up until the point in time in which she became a vampire struggling to tell a story. The story she was trying to tell was two lovers across the course of several lifetimes. I came up with a title for the book, and I honestly don't remember it anymore. I'm sure it's written down somewhere that I have no idea where it is, where most of my notes go. But she eventually accomplished this. It didn't happen until after she was embraced. And part of the reason was, up until that point in time, she really had no frame of reference for it. She was trying to tell a story. It wasn't just a love story. It was about love that endures through loss. And until she lost her ability to live as a human being, she'd never experienced loss. The kind of soul-wrenching loss she was trying to write about. And once that was done, and it was successful, she became paralyzed with the fear that she would never be able to accomplish that kind of success again. So she ran a bookstore. A store that sold used and rare books. She was the owner, and at times it seemed the sole employee. When she got rare books, it was because her sire, who was much older and an antiques dealer, got them for her. But the way her story played out, she started off obviously the underdog. She was a neonate. She was thrust into the seat of the Primogen. She was the leader for her whole clan. And in the beginning, she had the support of her clan. In the end, she didn't. In the end, I don't think anybody supported her. I don't think even her friends were really that supportive of her in the end. She let herself become consumed by her fear. I said she was in way over her head, and she desperately needed people to believe that she wasn't. That led her to make a lot of mistakes. The least of which being assuming that because she was a Primogen, because she had other friends on the Primogen Council who offered their support to her, that she would be okay. That she was able to be a leader. She wasn't. The first time her life was in danger, she completely lost her shit. She fled the building in a blind panic. Excuse me. And while she got the support of some members from her clan in trying to deal with the fact that someone may be out to kill her, she went looking for help in the wrong place. That wrong place happened to be an elder from a clan that is known from Clan Tremere. They're known for being ruthless. They're known for their support of the Camarilla, and they're not exactly known for being the nicest people. But she believed that this man loved her. She believed that he would help her. And in doing so, she gave blood from every member of her clan to Clan Tremere. That's a big deal. The Tremere are the wizards of the Vampire Masquerade game. If they have your blood, they can do a lot with it. They can use it to track you down. They can use it to hurt you. They can use it to find out how old you are. And even trace your lineage. There's a lot that can be done. The thing is that these are such closely held secrets within Clan Tremere. Nobody really knows what they can do outside of members of that clan. So as far as everybody else is concerned, they're going to die, and you've just signed their death warrant. Anna barely made it out alive. By virtue of a few mishaps and a meeting in a random bar. She had gone to a bar, and her Tremere lover was there. And he asked her, and she said, "Of course, I would do anything for you." He asked her to diabolarize him, to drink his blood until his body turned to ash. Mechanically speaking, that can kill the vampire, but not always. Sometimes the stronger, more powerful vampire will take up residence in the body of the younger, less powerful one. It was a very calculated move on his part, and one that I must applaud the other player for. Because even I didn't see that coming until it did. She wound up having to flee the city because of it. Neither one of them actually knew it at the time, but they were being shadowed by another elder from Clan Tremere who saw this exchange, saw this entire exchange, knew what was happening. He kidnapped her. She was supposed to die. But he had a crisis of conscience and let her go. So she fled. What really surprised me is how many people in the game were pulling for Anna to come out ahead. How many people liked the character. How many people actually told me how much they enjoyed watching her, and you know, especially right at the end, you know, I was getting messages from people that I hadn't even spoken to. I didn't even really know, asking me how they could save Anna. And I said, well, you can't. This is kind of a done deal. This is happening, and there's not really anything that can be done to stop it. That really surprised me, and that was when I realized that I had created a character unlike any other character I had created before, because I put so much of myself into her. I'm not a successful author yet. At the time I created Anna, I was revising the manuscript for my poetry collection for the second or third time. I wasn't really worried about being successful. I was worried about getting it done. Anna's original concept actually was for a toreador librarian. That felt at the time a little too close to home for me. It was something I could easily pull off, but it felt a little too close to home. And that is a concept for a character that I would like to play at some point. But at the time, it felt too close to myself. So I went for the successful author struggling to follow up her previous success. That was someplace that I thought I wanted to be. I still kind of think I'd like to be there, although I do dread getting there if that were to happen, because I honestly don't know how I would pull myself out of it. Anna pulled a lot from myself, especially the fear aspect. It wasn't in fear for my life, but I was an admin for this game. I was someone who was supposed to be helping run it. And I've been a storyteller for games prior to this. I'd never played any World of Darkness games ever prior to this. Well, I take that back. I played a one-off Vampire the Masquerade game at one point. It was very quick. I think it lasted most of an evening. And I had played Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. That was the extent of my experience. I had the second edition book that I had read cover to cover. That was all I knew coming into it. And I desperately needed people to believe that I knew what I was doing. And in some ways, I feel like maybe that was a mistake. Like, maybe I should have been honest with people that I didn't exactly know what I was doing. I'd been an admin on a forum where people played these kind of large group role-playing games, but I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't really know what I was getting into, and I certainly didn't expect it to go on for as long as it has. But instead of showing my vulnerability to people, I showed them Anna's vulnerability, and they identified with it. People who I played with, people who watched the sessions that we did, they saw something in her that resonated with them, that made them like her, that made them want to save her, whether or not they'd actually met her. Actually, even the people who turned against her in character, out of character, were very kind of on the fence about it. Most of them seemed to me like it was something that out of character they maybe didn't really want to do, but at the same time in character they felt like they had no choice. They felt like their character had no choice but to act this way, and as a player, they had little choice but to behave how their character would. When it came time to sit down and roleplay, and I fully agree with that. I don't think people should be acting out of character based on their own personal feelings. Having said that, that was not that was not at all what I expected, and as I said earlier, it's only in hindsight that I realized why that was. That I took my own emotions, my own feelings, and put them into the character. Anna never met her end, so to speak. She still exists. She's not dead. Not that a character that you lose in a game to death or anything else ever actually dies. They stay with you, their concept stays with you, their mindset stays with you, and someday you might play them again. And I think Anna is definitely one of those characters that I would love actually to sit down and play again. I don't know what setting I would play her in. I don't know what game I would play her in, but I would love to revisit that concept. But I've been rambling on for almost half of my time here about one character. So, moving on. Iris Breckenridge. She was the character I followed Anna up with. She was a young lady from Clan Ventru. The noble clan, the clan that likes to think of themselves as the rulers of all the other vampires. Well, one of them anyway. Having said that, Iris actually was a noble-born young lady. She did not particularly enjoy being a noble-born young lady. She found it boring. More than once, she remarked how she wasn't really raised by her father to be intelligent or well-schooled. She was raised to be a lady. She was raised to be accommodating, to be polite, to be generous, to take pride in her appearance, so that someday some nice young noble would want to come and marry her and basically shift the burden of caring for her from her father onto himself. She didn't particularly feel at home in this time period either. In a lot of ways, she actually missed the old days, the 1700s, when there were clear expectations for men and women. Iris was a character who started out having experienced a pretty traumatic loss, and over the course of the game, she lost everything. Towards the end of the time I was playing her, she had entered what I would call almost a death spiral of self-destruction. Subconscious self-destruction at first. And then as time went on, the less she cared about the consequences of her actions. But I will get to that later. Backing up, her younger sibling from the same sire had been murdered. And that was a grudge that she never got vengeance for. She found reason to let go of that grudge a little bit. Actually, she found reason to let go of that grudge almost altogether, to be perfectly honest. She had a fiance, and she lost him. She had a fiance in her mortal life who was murdered, and she took a fiance for herself shortly after I started playing the game as her, and he wound up murdered as well. Her sire died. Her younger broodmate from the same sire died, and towards the end, it seemed like she was the only one left standing, and she certainly felt like she was the only one left standing, and she wavered in between feeling like, as the last of her lineage, she had a duty to keep going, and just wanting to burn everything and leave for a new life. She met someone from the Anarchs who was completely and totally shocked to see her face, because she looked so much like his sire. And as it turns out, his sire had been related to her by blood, was her sister by birth. And she was killed by someone she regarded as a confidant and mentor. That person also found themselves as the prince of the city, and for a time she was the seneschal. She wound up faking her own death and leaving to join the Anarchs. She, as much as she wanted a vengeance, she knew it wasn't worth the cost she would have to pay for it. It wasn't worth the price that everyone would have to pay for it. She knew that it could start off a domino effect that would destroy the city that she was actually not born in, but spent most of her life in, that her sister was born in. So instead of taking that vengeance, she packed up and left. When I made Iris, I wanted to play a character that was completely the opposite of Anna. Someone who was confident, and someone who was assertive, someone who knew what she wanted and went after it. And in a way, I feel like I never achieved that. Because I was an administrator for the game. I gave up quite a few of her originally intended personality traits and goals in the interest of being accommodating to new people coming into the game, to people who were already in the game, and just facilitating play for them and facilitating plot for them. Towards the end of the time I was playing her, we had just come up on the 1 year. anniversary of the game starting. And I realized that as much as I like playing in these kinds of games, I didn't want to be an admin for another year. I didn't want the stress. I didn't want the headache. I didn't want the feeling that if I wasn't there, something was going to go wrong, or if I wasn't there when something went wrong, it wouldn't be fixed. I didn't want the stress of needing to come up with rules or debate clarifications or even new rules. I was just tired of the responsibility of managing such a huge project like that. And the more I felt like that, the more I focused on my writing. And the more I realized that I loved the people in the game. I enjoyed being there for them. I enjoyed helping them when they had a problem. I enjoyed helping them get their characters made. I enjoyed helping them find places to play. I enjoyed helping them find plot and things to do. But it wasn't as important to me as my writing was. And that's when I realized that I needed to step back, that I needed to be honest with people and tell them there are other things that are more important to me than this, and I feel like I need to focus on them. I did. I gave it a week for them to find someone to replace me, to wrap up any threads that were left dangling before I took off, and then I didn't even leave the group, honestly. I was that done. I just stopped checking it. And I sort of feel like that frustration really came out in Iris at the end. She was such a frustrating character. I felt like I never got a handle on her. I felt like I never understood her enough to really accurately portray her, to anticipate what she wanted or what she would do in a given situation, other than be emotional, sometimes to the point of irrationality. To be grossly overconfident of her own ability. And even just angry. Iris was a really angry character, looking back. I think that may be one of her biggest mistakes, not her self-subversive tendencies. She really was her own worst enemy, in all honesty. If I ever needed to roll a character or wanted to roll a character who was their own worst enemy, I would probably play Iris again, because that's what she was. And I was my own worst enemy. I knew that I wasn't really liking what I was doing for a while. I had actually taken a break from an administrative role for about 2 weeks in February. And I convinced myself that I just needed a break, and everything would feel, things would be better, things would be fine. I could come back and everything would be okay, things would go smoothly. And they did for a little while. And then I started feeling tired and agitated and frustrated again. And it seems like every time that happened, it bled into the character. I didn't even intend for it to. It just happened. And while I was frustrated with her because I couldn't get a handle on her, while I was frustrated with myself and the responsibilities that I had taken on, and my inability to let them go, people have actually told me, I have had friends tell me, I have had recent acquaintances tell me that they have watched Iris's story, and they think she's a fabulous character. They think she's a wonderful character, and that I did a wonderful job playing her, and that blew me away. I couldn't understand why they thought I did a good job playing her when I never felt like I was able to accurately portray her to the best of my ability. But they didn't see that. Like, they didn't see what was going on in my head. They didn't know what I intended Iris to be. They saw her as she was. And it pulled that I have been told repeatedly is that I tend to play a very emotional game. And I'm not going to lie, I do. But I never thought that anybody would identify with Iris and with her struggle. I figured that it was just me. In my capacity, eternally, to be my own worst enemy, who would ever identify with Iris. That was a failure on my part. A lot of times I tend to approach character creation the way a writer would. You want to create the best thing that can happen at times as a writer is for a character to completely blindside you with what they've done. And I felt completely blindsided by Iris all the time. But I was looking at that from the frame of a role player, not a writer. If instead of playing Iris, I had been writing her, I would have been thrilled. Because this is a character who went almost in the complete opposite direction of what I'd intended. It meant that I had created an incredibly realistic character that people could and probably would identify with. But I couldn't see that. And I think it's because, well, I intended Iris to be very assertive, more assertive than I am. But I intended for her to be driven. I intended for her to know what she wants and go after it. She did do that. She wound up actually doing that. Getting away from me, from my attempts at controlling her. And becoming a character that was very human, very real, and very difficult for me to get a handle on. I think people who've never played her have a much better of her personality to this day than I do. And that brings me to one of my most recent characters, Jade Valentine. Jade I created for a Mage the Awakening game. It's being played the same as the YouTube Vampire the Masquerade experiment is, but in the city of New York, with crossover between almost all of the other White Wolf games, which is not the best idea when you're talking about the classic World of Darkness or the old World of Darkness setting. They weren't really meant to, the game systems themselves weren't really meant to cross over and coexist. They were meant to exist in their own isolated universe, with most of the other creatures available as antagonistic forces. Jade Valentine is a published author. She started off the game as an apprentice mage who had no idea of her own power. She actually had no idea she was a mage until people came knocking on her door and explained things to her, picked her up and literally, well, almost literally, dropped her off at a chantry to be taught by the Hermetics, or the Order of Hermes Mages. They taught her sorcery, hedge magic. She has, from the beginning, I envisioned her having a very strong tie to the dream world. I originally thought she would awaken as a tradition mage. She didn't. She became one of the self-awakened. The books call them orphans. At the same time, they mentioned that the characters would never call themselves orphans because that's a derogatory term. That's actually a title Jade has embraced. She will call herself an orphan. Not in front of other mages, except for the ones that she's close to. Going back a few steps, I said she was an author. Her series of novels that she wrote, which was semi-successful, was based on her dreams. They were very real to her, especially as a child. She wound up in therapy for that. She wound up on medication because of it. Her parents, as kind of, well, as very, two parents who were raised by hippies. Jade's grandparents were first-generation hippies. Her parents sort of rebelled against that in their own way. Her mother went to college and became a nurse. Her father became a gun safety advocate, and Jade grew up around guns, actually. Jade's story hasn't ended, so I'm not really sure where to start describing it thus far. I may just stick to her history. I mentioned her parents were second-generation hippies. She has a sister as well, and two nephews that she knows of. She's estranged from her family. She's estranged from her sister because her sister married very young and had children. And her sister sort of resents Jade for not doing the same, for having a life. Jade's sister is not someone who embraced motherhood. She longs for the life she didn't get a chance to have because she had to be a mother. She doesn't speak to her mother very often. Jade doesn't speak to her mother very often because of her father. When Jade sold her manuscripts to a publisher, her father hit the roof and more or less threw her out of the house. Because someone with her talent, in his words, didn't need to be selling out. So she got a job, and she had the income from her books. She got a place to live, and she lived on her own from the time she was 17 until the time she was almost 28. That was when the mages found her and whisked her off for training because they recognized what she was writing about. They recognized the potential in her to become a mage. And she learned hedge magic. It's not the same thing as the magic the mages use. It's basically cobbled together from a bunch of different skill sets. And mechanically, something called Numina. But it's more or less the kind of magic you would learn if you went into, like, Barnes & Noble, browsed the New Age section, picked up a few books, and decided to start working spells yourself. I think that's a pretty accurate way of describing it. One of her... I actually stopped playing her for a bit. I'd started playing her around Christmas, and I wound up stopping for a bit because life got in the way. Unfortunately. When I came back towards the tail end of June, beginning of July, one of her first adventures out into the city, after some events that had left her absolutely terrified and realizing that there are really dangerous things out there. And she began having nightmares because of it. One of those first adventures, she met one of the Fallen, one of the player characters created using the rules for Demon the Fallen. And they began dating. Almost none of the other mages supported this. To the mages, the Fallen are the same things as demons. And mages who enter into deals with demons become twisted. They become warped, and instead of being these great scions of creation with near unlimited power, they twist into something dangerous and destructive and difficult sometimes to identify and put down. And obviously, they don't want that for Jade. They know her, they like her. She's actually a very sweet girl. That bothered her for a while. And Jade's story thus far has really been one of character development, of getting to the point where she's comfortable with who she is she's comfortable enough in who she is and secure enough in the fact that she loves her boyfriend and her boyfriend loves her, to not care what anybody else thinks. I really don't know what else to say about her, as I said, because her story has not ended yet. So I'm going to move on while we have about 10 minutes left before I need to wrap this up and talk about one other character. This one from a Vampire the Requiem Chronicle that was run by a good friend of mine using the Blood and Smoke updated rule set. Her name is Natalie Nova Sabine. Nova is her nickname. Nova is her nickname because when I created the character, I thought it would be interesting if I based a character's personality around my Labrador's personality. My Labrador's name is Nova. She is all over the place. She's energetic, she's bubbly, she's outgoing. She is very active. She's always ready for something to do. And that sort of manifested itself in a kind of a weird way. I built the character together with another close friend of mine. We built our characters as twins, actually. He was a lawyer, a shady lawyer, who worked his way into the district attorney seat, and his sister, Nova, was a criminal. She was a drug dealer, and she was more or less his enforcer. He made his way into position through intimidation and bribery, and Nova made good on his threats. The game was set on the tail end of the settling of dust, or actually during the settling of dust from a recent revolution. That saw the Carthian movement, basically the anarchs of the, I know it's not a great way to describe it, but I don't really have time to get into that much detail. Basically, a more democratic sect of vampires set up and in charge of the city. She had participated in that. She had fun in it. She earned a reputation for kneecapping priests with a crowbar. That was the kind of character that I played. I wanted to play a character that was not necessarily a very intelligent or social character. I wanted to play a more balanced character. She was intelligent. She knew how to mix drugs. She actually knew how to make bombs. One of the last sessions that we played before the Chronicle went on hold for a little bit was her sitting in a Walmart mixing bombs. She could hotwire a car. She could pick a lock. She kind of lived a hard life. I never really wrote a backstory for her. I just let it come out through the course of gameplay. She was fiercely loyal to her brother. But at the same time, the more the Chronicle went on, the more she realized that they live in two different worlds. She lived in a world of drug dealers and drug users, of parties in people's basements and jeans and worn out old hoodies, and he lived in a glamorous world of high society parties and ball gowns and champagne. And she actually started questioning her place in the coterie, to the point where in the last big conflict, she was almost ready to martyr herself for him, or so that, you know, nobody else would have to, because she saw herself as one of these things doesn't belong here. Hey, guess what? It's me. By the end, though, she knew what she wanted, and she was going to go after it. She wasn't going to let anyone tell her that she couldn't have it. She wasn't going to let anyone dissuade her from her course of action. She was going to go after it, and she could get it. And I realize now that in some ways, her path of character development almost mirrors Jade's. That's not intentional. I'm not really sure how that happened. That chronicle has been on hold for a while. So Nova's story has not ended yet either, but it does have a definitive stopping point, which is her ready and willing to admit that she doesn't know what she's doing. She does have a temper, but she's good at what she does. And being willing to learn from others, being able to learn to get better control of her temper and keep it under better control. And being able to accept help from others and accept her faults, and instead of letting them get her down and being very defeatist about it, to the point where she's willing to end her own life, or, well, not end it, but let it be ended, so that her brother can succeed. I am almost out of time. I have about a minute left. If you have watched, thank you for watching. I very much appreciate it. I hope you're enjoying BrigadeCon, and I hope you found this useful to you. I am here. I'm not any of these people. I know I'm not any of these people. I feel kind of bummed that I'm not playing some of these characters anymore, because I still want to play them. But I'm not, I never cried over it. I never lost my mind over it. I never forgot that I was playing a character in a game. What I did learn, though, and what did happen while I was playing these characters, is I learned I learned a lot about myself and about my emotions, about the things that I was thinking and the things I was feeling, and ways to cope with it. I feel like I'm able to identify them better now. I also learned that the more of yourself you risk putting into a character, the more you gain from it. The more realistic the character will be, the more fun you can have playing the character. Even on the days when I really hated Iris, I always had fun playing her because she was real to she was real to me. She was interesting to me. She is someone that I would walk up to and enjoy having a conversation with. And at the end of the day, I think that's one of the best things you can have when you create a character. Otherwise, they're not going to be enjoyable to play. So, in summary, if you take away anything from this, it's that you don't have anything to fear by flying in the face of the conventional wisdom. You might learn something about yourself in the process, and hopefully you'll learn that sometimes throwing the conventional wisdom out the door means having a lot of fun. Thank you for watching, and enjoy the rest of the convention. I know I will.